So even though we're in the preseason week before season 2 officially starts, there's still a handful of things you can do to progress quite a bit in this preseason period to give you a bit of a head start once season 2 actually starts. Now this video is going to be probably released on Monday, so you'll probably have around a day to do the stuff I'm going over in the video, but pretty much everything I'm going over doesn't necessarily need to be done in this preseason period, and all of it is still going to be applicable once season 2 actually starts. Doing this stuff the first week will just give you a little bit of a head start, but doing this stuff once season 2 starts, gonna be some really important parts of progression. And this video is going to be more focused on solo players and more specifically people trying to do all of the delve content, but a lot of this video is also going to be applicable if you're doing pretty much anything else in the game as well, because I'm personally someone that does a lot of delves, but I'm also going to be doing a lot of Mythic Plus on pretty much all of my characters as well. And I think we should go over the most important thing first, because this is not only going to be a very important thing to do in this preseason week, but for all weeks after that if you're trying to progress your characters, and that is going to be your Great Vault. Now the Great Vault is actually going to work in a little bit of a different way once the season starts. But in this first preseason week, all you want to do is fill up as many rows in your vault as you can. And that will generally mean just going and doing your Mythic 0 dungeons, doing 8 of those to get all 3 rows, and then going and doing 8 delves. Now you don't necessarily need these to be the highest item level possible, especially when it comes to delves. You could do like all tier 11 delves to get the highest item level possible, but because the item levels are so low from the vault in this first week compared to say doing higher tier delves or even getting hero track from delves or going and doing Mythic Plus runs or going and doing raids, since the item level is going to be so low compared to that, really the only thing you want is to fill up your delve rows to try and get tier pieces out of this first preseason week going into week 1 of season 2, because tier pieces, as you may remember from the first season of Midnight, actually work in a bit of a different way as well, in that if you get your 4 set on a character, you can then start to get more catalyst charges from doing endgame content. So from doing higher tier delve runs, I think it's only about default delves, but I'm not sure on that, doing Mythic Plus runs or defeating raid bosses. All of those after you have your 4 set can give you those catalyst charges, which will just allow you to catalyze a higher tier and higher item level gear when you get it. Now on top of that, there's also another pretty big change with the catalyst going into season 2, in that it is not turning your gear into this pre-statted tier set pieces anymore. Because let's go back to Midnight season 1, if you got say a pair of legs, you could put that in the catalyst and it would change it into the actual tier piece of legs with the exact same stats no matter what piece of legs you were putting into it. But now in season 2 of Midnight, whenever you put in a piece of gear in the catalyst, it keeps the exact same stats, it keeps any of the special effects on that piece of gear, it keeps everything on that piece of gear the same, it just turns it into a tier piece. And we can take a look at this in game. So this will be your vault, and you will generally just want all 6 of these bottom slots filled in. That's pretty much all you're going to really need or want in this preseason week. As you can see, we can't actually get any of the raid section filled out. You can get one of them, and this will be important going into week 2, that the new layer boss is also considered a raid boss, and the new layer boss actually has some best in slot gear for a bunch of the specs or classes in the game. So that is definitely something you'll probably want to do going into season 2, but you just want to fill up all of these bottom rows. This is one of like my 6 characters that I'm working on completely filling up these bottom rows in, and this is mainly because the best thing possible you can get out of these bottom rows in this preseason week is just getting a tier piece out of it. Especially if you're not a raider, where you are going to have a lot more readily available access to tier pieces, you are definitely going to want to make sure you can have access to as many options in your Great Vault at the end of every week. Because again, getting that 4 piece on all of your characters is very, very important for overall power, but then being able to get those catalyst charges from any content you would already be doing. Now, another big factor with the Great Vault is going to be that after this preseason period, you will also be able to choose reroll tokens like we can in Midnight Season 1 out of your Great Vault. So later on in Midnight Season 1, if you've been playing, we had the reroll token system introduced, and as one of the rewards from your Great Vault, you could choose the tokens to then buy another reroll token from the vendor. But now going into Season 2, there will just be an option once Season 2 has started that you can just choose a reroll token. And these are going to work in the exact same way they did in Midnight Season 1, where let's say you use a reroll token on a Mythic Plus dungeon and you get an item. If you do a high enough Mythic Plus dungeon, it'll give you a Myth Track item, and it will also remove that piece of gear from being able to be obtained through that reroll token again. So you're essentially whittling down the options you have so you can more target farm the gear you're looking for. These tokens, as with Season 1, are also going to be usable within delves. It's also going to be interesting what labyrinths are going to be, because those are going to come in Season 2, so those may have some really good gear to use your reroll tokens on. And with saying that, unless something has changed since the last time I saw this, I'm pretty sure you still need to have at least 3 rows or 3 slots filled up in your Great Vault to be able to get that reroll token. So that will be important to know for every week going forward. Now, the second thing you're going to want to do, whether you're an endgame player doing Mythic Plus dungeons and raids, or whether you're a solo player primarily doing delves or open world content, and that's completing your Omnium Folio. Now, if you stopped playing earlier on in Season 1 of Midnight, you may have not done this system, or you may have not completed it. This is a small borrowed power system where you just do a handful of quests. When it first came out, you can only do 1 quest per week, but since it's all out now, you can go do all of the quests, which I think is around 6 quests, maybe a little bit more when you first started. But you just do all of these quests and it unlocks these powers for you that will just give you some additional power. You have a handful of different options you can switch pretty much whenever you want, but they're generally just going to be like small damage and healing procs. They're going to be some stat increases, and they're going to be like some survivability powers. And while these aren't like crazy strong, you're not really going to notice them a ton. They are just pure extra power in pretty much everything you're doing. So you're definitely going to want to go and pick those up. And I think this is also going to be good to show in game. Now, if you haven't picked up the quest, these quests will be located on the Isle of Quel'Danes. Inside one of these buildings, there are some NPCs, and that's where you will pick up the quest. But if you haven't picked up any of these quests, you can actually just go to your adventures log and scroll through these options. There should be an option called Omnium Folio that you can pick up and start that quest chain, and it just has you go do a bunch of different content. None of it's hard. Some of it can be a little bit grindy just because of some of the content it wants you to go do. Now, what is nice is that this is all account wide. So take your strongest character or your most geared up character and go do the quest line on that one character, and then all of your other characters will have these same powers unlocked. And then once you have that unlocked, there is this icon, the expansion summary by your minimap. You just click on that and there will be a power section, and this will have the Omnium Folio. This will probably look a little bit different because an add-on changed this for me, but then you just have all of these powers you could switch between, and in pretty much any build guide you're looking at online, it will also have the ones best for your spec or your class or your build, and you just set up these powers and that will give you some additional power. And again, it's not like crazy power increases, and you'll just have it for seemingly the rest of the expansion because this was something added in Season 1 and it's still here and active in Season 2. So go complete your Omnium Folio. You do it once and you're good to go on all of your characters for the rest of the expansion, it seems. And those are the main parts of the video that if you're not specifically like a solo player, you primarily do raids or delves, that's really the only part of the video you're going to care about. The rest is going to be more focused on solo players, and especially players that are trying to do delves or trying to do the Nemesis boss, especially if you're trying to get that achievement to do the question mark in the first week for the Hall of Fame. So if you're more of a solo player trying to do all of that, these next things are going to be pretty good for you. And these things, again, aren't going to be things you just want to do in the first week. These are going to be pretty big parts of your progression in general until you really fully complete them. Now, the first thing is going to be to progress your Valeera into Season 2. There's actually two ways to do this. That is both leveling up your Valeera, because her cap has been increased from level 60 in Season 1 now to level 80 in Season 2. And the second part is going to be to get her new curios, because like every season with delves, the curios are reset. Now, I already have a video on how to best level up Valeera in the most fast and efficient way as possible. I only have my Valeera at level 64 because how geared my characters are right now. With Valeera at 64, I can already do pretty much all the delves pretty efficiently. And once Season 2 starts, there's going to be a lot more readily available leveling options for your Valeera that'll allow you to get her to level 80 by doing content you are probably already going to do, especially if you're like me and going to be running a lot of alt characters throughout as many bountiful delves as you can. You'll level up your Valeera through that pretty quickly as well. So if you already had Valeera like level 60, even though getting her say up to level 80 will give you a pretty big power increase overall, you still don't have to do the grind to do that, especially since you're probably already going to be doing delves and leveling her up anyway. But outside of that, you have her new curios. Now, just to go over her customizations, she still has the same tank, healer, and DPS roles with pretty much all the same things. One of the big things they took out of her base kit and allowed you to customize is her poisons. So previously, all of her specs had a specific poison attached to it. Now you can just choose any of those poisons. So you have a poison that debuffs her enemies, you have a poison that buffs her and you up for not taking damage, you just keep getting a stacking damage buff, or you have the venom that gives you an increase to your leech, avoidance, and speed. So depending on what role and what class or spec you're playing, you may want to change up these poisons, and this is just an extra customization layer we didn't have last season. But then you have her curios, and these are gonna work in pretty much the same way as curios have worked since delves have been introduced. You have a combat curio and a utility curio slot. You just have new options because we are in a new season. Now, in this preseason period, you can go get a few of these. In fact, I think it's primarily just getting the rank 1 version of all of the combat and utility curios. You can get those pretty easily just by running delves. But in this preseason period, to be able to get more of these curios and upgrade them, you will have to get the maps you can get in this first week. So the delve maps that allow you to complete a delve, you activate the map, the Trove Hunter's Bounty, and then it will give you a hero track piece at the end of the delve if you do a delve on tier 8 or higher. If you go obtain these bounty maps on a bunch of different characters and run them all, the chest you get that piece of gear out of should always give you a curio, which you can't really get in any other way this preseason period. Once we actually start Season 2, you will be able to just do your bountiful delves and your high tier delves and keep upgrading these curios. But as of right now, it's pretty much only through those maps. That's how I have things like this power at rank 2, this power at rank 4, and then I have this power at rank 2 as well, because I went and did a bunch of characters, got them their bounties map, and ran those bounty maps. So for the rest of this preseason week, if you want to go do that on alt, you could definitely level up your curios, which will be a massive power increase just starting off for your Season 2 delves, especially if you're trying to do the delve nemesis boss. But like mentioned, once Season 2 actually starts, you could just run a bunch of delves, especially if you're running like bountiful delves on a bunch of characters, and you'll be able to upgrade these curios much more quickly than you could just trying to spam these bounty maps on all of your alts. Now, the second thing you're going to want to be doing as a primarily solo player and especially as a delve player is you're going to want to do as much of your corrosive codex as you possibly can. Now, I have a video going over this and pretty much the best way to farm this new currency for this new borrowed power system in the preseason period. Going into Season 2, you should have more options for obtaining this currency, especially since the main way I went over in that video is you get this currency from the new layer boss, which you could get this currency once per week on every character, especially since you have that opportunity every single week on every character. That will be a good way to get this currency, but there should be even more ways to obtain this currency going into Season 2. Now, the currency you need for this new system are called corrosive souls, and they are warbound, so you could trade them all to one character and unlock all of these powers, because this corrosive codex is just a new borrowed power system where you unlock these powers and they are account wide. So you unlock a power in one character, all the characters have it. Now, Now, at a baseline, you can just unlock these powers and switch them whenever you go to a Corrosive Codex podium, which there is one at the start of every delve, so it's easy to change. You could just select and deselect any of the powers you have unlocked, and then it's activated, and these powers are also usable in all content except dungeons and raids. So all open world content, all delves, these will be active and be able to be used, and they are just a pretty big power increase. Now, how this system actually works is you use a certain amount of this currency, specifically 8 of these Corrosive Souls, to unlock another power, and once you have all 12 of these powers unlocked, you can then activate 2 of these powers. And that's the main reason you want to make sure to be progressing this system in a decent time period, because getting 2 of these powers is going to be crazy. Not only are these powers really strong, but a lot of them have synergies with poisoning effects, and some of the powers themselves can poison you or poison enemies, which will just play back into the other power you have selected. So I just have 18 Corrosive Souls right here. So you would just go into one of the consoles and you would just click it and it would unlock it. So I use 8 of my powers, and now I just have another power unlocked, and I could deselect a power and select this other power anytime I want it. So this is going to take a lot of these Corrosive Souls. If you have enough level 90 characters to go run the layer boss on each one of those characters, you could actually complete this week 1, but that is a lot of level 90 characters, and the other methods to obtain these souls right now are pretty grindy, so you don't have to really rush to complete this in this first preseason week. I think completing it in the first official week of season 2 will be much easier and much less grindy. So I could just unlock another power here, and now I've used up all my souls, and I have a good chunk of these powers unlocked, and I could just switch between them to whatever I want. Now, the main one I'd recommend getting for just the easiest proc of damage power is the Ophidian Maw. It just has a chance when damaging anything for a big snake to erupt below the target that deals a bunch of damage and splits the damage in AoE. And if those targets are poisoned and a non-boss and they're below 20% life, they will be instantly executed, which in delves is actually really nice, especially since Valeera can also poison enemies herself. So she can throw down a poison enemies. This procs on low health enemies, it'll execute them. But no matter what, once this procs, it does a lot of damage. In fact, even on like tanks or DPS that are doing, say, good AoE damage, if this thing procs a few times in a fight, it'll be one of your highest damaging abilities. So Ophidian Maw is really crazy. I'd recommend getting this first. It is definitely going to be, I think, the powerhouse of this system in terms of just giving you overall damage procs. And that's pretty much all you want to be focusing on progressing in this preseason period. But like I mentioned, this video is going to be released probably on Monday, so there's not going to be a ton of time left to do all of this stuff before the reset on Tuesday. But even if you can't do all of this in the preseason period, all of this stuff I went over in this video, every single part of it is still going to be very important to progress through even once season 2 starts. Doing your Great Vault every week is still going to be very important, especially if you're still trying to get your 4 set. Completing your Omnium Folio is still going to be important for the rest of the expansion because it's just free power increases. Leveling up your Valeera up to level 80 is still going to be very important for the entirety of season 2, because if you're running delves on any characters, especially lesser geared alts, having that extra power on Valeera is going to be very nice. And then unlocking all of your Corrosive Codex powers is going to be very strong, because once you get all that completed, you can then activate 2 powers, and no matter what you're doing in delves or open world content, that's going to be very strong, especially once labyrinths are released in the next patch. Whatever that ends up being, seeming to be like delve raids, that extra power is going to be very, very strong for that as well. So make sure to go complete all of this and continue to progress through this stuff as season 2 starts. But that's all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.